Hi, everyone. Let's get started. Welcome to our session today, or this session now. It's on, and let me check for the correct title, it's on ERM and how we connect knowledge bases as metadata sources. And this will, again, happen in two parts. I will start and give a demo how we work with the global open knowledge base as external meta source in our FOLIO GBV systems. And then Owen will talk about other options to connect and get metadata and our development plans. And I'm happy if people virtually can give me a sign or a notion whether you can hear me and see. You cannot see anything so far, but I will share my screen now. Perfect, I see thumbs. That's brilliant. And I will now stop my video, but share my screen. Okay. So when I'm working at the headquarters of a network that has 200 academic libraries, and for all of them, we are implementing FOLIO, and we are starting with FOLIO ERM. And we have a specific setup to get our metadata for electronic resources. And I would like to start with showing you which apps we are using for ERM at the moment. I mean, we will have more in future, such as e-usage app, but we are using live at the moment, the agreements app, and I don't think that I need to say anything about that. So we are managing our electronic resources in agreements app, and in licenses, we are managing our licenses. We're using the dashboard. We are working with ERM comparisons as ERM app, where we can compare agreements, but we can compare packages as well. And we can compare packages in this app because we use the internal knowledge base of FOLIO ERM. As an external source, we use the global open knowledge base, or GOKb. The GOKb is community managed, and there you have information on electronic resources, and you can track package changes. It's a cooperative project, so libraries or institutions are working together and uploading keyboard files and packages, and so it's a shared effort in a way. And then in FOLIO again, we're using the local KB admin app, and there we can follow and log the different jobs. When we harvest and sync data from the external knowledge base, we can see which has worked out and which didn't. Next slide is a diagram on our data flows, and let me briefly, yeah, perfect. Checks chat. You can see FOLIO in the middle as the orange box, and on the left side, it's the global open knowledge base, that's the green box. And like the data flow would go, a library would upload a keyboard file to the GOKb with the titles that are in a package because you're purchasing the package and your vendor has sent you a file, and that's uploaded then to GOKb. And there is some data enrichment happening. For us in Germany, it's very important that we are cataloging our journals in the journal database, that we get identifiers from there as well. And so there is data enrichment happening. We enrich via IDs and core bibliographic metadata from the journal database. FOLIO is then harvesting the package metadata and package content on a regular basis from the GOKb. At the moment, I think this syncing job starts every hour, and then depending on how many packages you need to sync, that takes maybe a bit longer than an hour. What we plan to do when you look at the right side to our union catalog is the arrow above. So libraries, when they purchase packages, we have harvested them into our FOLIO system, they manage them as agreement lines in Agreements app. So you have an internal knowledge base where all the metadata is displayed that is synced from GOKb, but those packages and e-resources that you have access to are then managed as agreement lines in Agreements. And for those, we want to create holdings and items in our union catalog. That's something that we still need to develop, but that's our plan. So the most automated workflow and data flow that you can imagine is what we aim for in the end. What is already working is this online update from our union catalog to folio inventory. So finally, we will have the physical resources, but the electronic resources as well in our inventory and folio, because we have this union catalog update from there to folio inventory. And now I'm already starting to demo. And I will share my screen in a few seconds again. I have, I will use Snapshot. I have created some rudimentary records to show you. So we are here in Agreements app. And you can see that we have, because we are using the internal knowledge base, we can search for agreements. That's all the resources and packages that are managed by our library. And then you have a local knowledge base search where you could search for all the data that's synced from the external source. And before I show you two workflows, when I'm purchasing a new package, I want to show you where we set up the connection. And that happens in Settings app. And then in the local KB admin section, external data sources. And there you can see that in this case, we have connected the GOKb test. There is a GOKb live system, but in this case, we have to Snapshot is the GOKb test connected. You need to add some data that you can see, for instance, the URL. And there you can see as well the synchronization status. For instance, at the moment, it's now idle, but you would see if it's in process. And then you can see when the external source was last checked. And you could, if something went wrong and the process got stuck, you can reset the sync status if you want to, and you can always edit and delete external sources. You can as well add new ones, so you don't need to limit to one external source, but you could have multiple. Then I will switch to the local KB admin app, where you can see the sync jobs. So you can search on the left-hand side for all different job statuses or for specific results. If you are missing a package that you have uploaded to GOKb in your internal knowledge base, for instance, you would check whether it has been synced. And then maybe you would specifically search for jobs that have failed or that were interrupted. And if you have a look at one of these jobs, you can see we have an error log if there were errors, and you have an info log as well. Both can be exported if you want to work outside of Folio with them. And you can, via this Actions button, delete the job as well. So this is rather an admin tool. Really, if something went wrong, you could check here. And we are still, I think, working on improvements to display errors and the logs. Now I'm switching to the Agreements app. As mentioned earlier, we have two different tabs. So the Agreement Search. And here I could, for instance, search for specific agreements that I already have added. I have added a Taylor and Francis for leisure and tourism agreement. And that would be my first example. I will now purchase, or I have purchased this package. I have already created the agreement for it. You can do that prior to searching for the package, or you can do that afterwards. That's depending on your workflows. So the agreement is already here. And I will now go to the local KB search to add the relevant package. Because maybe I can briefly go back, Taylor and Francis, and to show you that so far we have no agreement lines. I really have just created the agreement itself, but there are no agreement lines connected so far. So I will now go to the local KB search. And here I can search for individual titles or for packages. And I can search for specific external data sources. So I could limit to GOKb in this case if I wanted to. And I could as well search for the title that I want to have. And that was the Taylor and Francis Spore. Let's see how far we can get with that. It should be the current package. And you can see I have 2 package results, and the one that I'm purchasing is this one, the second one. And I can add it from here to my basket. And from that basket, I can then add it to my agreement. What I can do as well is have a look at the different information. So we have the content type, we have different identifiers. What I think is great for us in our network is this direct link to the GOKb, where I have added this package. So I could check if I'm missing a title or something else, or I'm wondering about specific things, or I want to know who's uploaded that package. I could follow that link and would be directed directly, great wording, to the global open knowledge base and this specific package. So, and you can always see whether you have already agreements for this package. And what is important is this section. You can see the list of titles that are in this package. And you have there titles to links to the title on the platform. You can see the coverages, and you can see these tabs here. You can see which title is, or what is the current list of titles. If we had titles that are already announced but not yet in the package, you could see them under the future tab. And if we have titles that are dropped, you would see them in this dropped section here. And you can then have a closer look to the individual titles if you want to. So if I now click on one of the titles, again, I have then some identifiers, some more information on this specific title. And here I can see the options to acquire this title. Maybe it's on different platforms. It's available via different providers with different license terms, or you have different coverages. And in this case, I would just add this package here to my basket. And you can see the basket in the top right corner behind this button, view one item. And from here, I then can create my new agreement, or I can add that to an existing agreement. And as I have already created one, I would just add that. Add to selected agreement, and then it's automatically now here as an agreement line under the agreement. And here you can see the titles that are within the package as well. So that's not only visible in the internal knowledge base, but as well in your agreement section. And here again, you can see the package changes over time. So you have a current tab and a future tab and a dropped tab. So what happens if I'm searching for a package that's not in my internal knowledge base? Because I think this is quite easy and quite quick. What happens if I now go to the local KB search and I'm searching for a package that's not yet existing in my internal knowledge base? And I search for Springer behavioral. Oh, every time I have only one hit, the details pane opens automatically. In this case, that's the Springer Behavioral Science and Psychology eBooks 2020. I'm purchasing the 2022 one. So let's have a look on this one. This is already in one of my agreements because this is an older package. I'm now purchasing a newer package, and I did not find any package in my internal knowledge base. So now I'm then leaving Folio and I'm switching to the GOKb. And this is the test GOKb. You have a live GOKb as well. In our network, we connect to all the test systems, the test GOKb, and we train the GOKb usage as well. And to all the live systems, we definitely link the live GOKb. But for our test environment and this demo, I think the test GOKb is very, very good. So what I always start with when I'm in GOKb is I would start searching for the package, just to see whether at this moment in time any other institution just is in the process of adding this package to the global open knowledge base. So in this case, just search it again. And here again, we can see that we only have this 2020 package. That's the one that we saw in our internal knowledge base as well. So I can now add my package that, because I have received a title list from my vendor, I just now need to bring it into my internal folio knowledge base. And what I can do before I start adding it is this, I can use this KBART validator just to see whether my file that I have is okay, and the system will throw out no errors. And here I can just upload my file, and that's this one. I have it on my computer, and then I can say, okay, validate, and I will then see the number of rows and how many errors I have in that file. And 0 is always a good thing. So now I can start adding that to the GOKb. And I would do that via create package. The creation of packages, providers, reference titles is only possible when I'm logged in, and I'm logged in as myself. Every user gets an individual account, or you can have institutional accounts as well, but you're definitely assigned to one curatory group, because the curatory group is then responsible for this package that is uploaded. And every time there are updates to that package, for instance, if there is a title joining or a title leaving and I receive a new list as an institution, I would then update this new list to the GOKb. And by that, we can track all the changes in GOKb, but as well in our internal knowledge base in Folio. Okay, and then let's create the package. You can see at the top that we have different steps. 4 steps in total, and we start with the general section. I will add the name to the package. Should not have chosen such a long one. Then I need to add a provider, and it's the same in Folio. You have these red asterisks. And that's a mandatory field then. And I just start typing Springer, and this is Springer Nature, for instance, so I can add that from the drop-down list. And here the same, just select then the correct platform and provider. And if your provider or platform is not yet existing, you can add it as well. You can see in the left-hand pane the Create Provider section. So next step is then step 2, package properties. I can define scope, or I can define, I don't need to, and a content type. In this case, it's ebooks. Let's say this is a global package. If I have a consortium, for instance, this could be a consortial package or a regional package, and then I can give the name of the region or consortium. And you can as well upload local packages that are just for your institution. So I say it's a global package. I could add identifiers or name variants, but I don't want to, so I go to next. We are in step 3, so now I'm adding the titles, and this can always be done manually, but I have a file that I want to import. KBART import is the button that I'm pushing then here, and here I can select the file again. That was this 2022 file. And I can do a partial update. For instance, if next month I receive a new list where just some titles have changed, and I could have a dry run if I want to, but I validated the package before already, so I think it should be fine. Then I say validate. Again, we have the raw statistics, 0 warnings. I can confirm. And now this package is added to this record here. It's not uploaded, but it's added. I need to click next. You always need to go to the last step and then submit in the end. This is a summary step where you can see the name, the provider platform, and the KBART file that you have uploaded. You can see it's automatically assigned to my curatory group because I have uploaded that. And if there are any questions or errors, those would be then assigned to my curatory group as well. And I would need to take care of that. Submit, confirm. And then the upload starts. And you can always see the progress here. So it's quite quick, 60%. And I think in the second step, there will be some title matching done. That's now starting. And you can always have a look at the report. And further down, if there would be some errors, for instance, you have an identifier conflict that you need to take care as a curatory group, because as soon as you have any conflicts there, you would need to take care of them. And before you did not do that, the package would not be updated to your Folio system because you want to have clean data. But here it looks good so far. Nothing mentioned at the bottom of this page here, so no reviews to be done. We're just waiting for this bar to come to 100%.
What are the global reference items that it's referring to here?
Do you want to say something to that? Yeah. We have the GOKb team and experts sitting here. Yeah, I will come to you.
Yeah, so what was important for us for connecting, especially for connecting the global open knowledge base to our existing infrastructure, is having globally identifiable and unique matches to our existing metadata records. For example, very important for us is in Germany is the journal database. So they do have records for each and every journal that we use in Germany, and they have one ID. And it's important for us that we have a globally identifiable title record, as well as the package specific titles, let's say, which may have conflicts between them, which we want to record, but we still want to give the users like our best idea of the globally valid title. So that means that one of those reference titles can be linked to a lot of package specific titles, and you can look at them. Yeah.
But do you think that's something that usually the user of the system, like the ERM librarian, needs to take care of? Only if there are some errors, right? And then people need to take care that everything's okay.
Yeah, so what we're doing right now actually is we're working together with this national serial catalog, and they are handling most of the conflicts specifically pertaining to journals themselves. So we will automatically send the conflicts to them, not to your your own curatorial group.
Do you want to advertise your GOKb session just for a second?
Yeah, if you just come back here after the break, I will be talking about. I will give the community update for what we've done in the last year, I would say, in GOKb, and it will be a lot of screenshots of UI stuff, new workflows, and what we've done.
Perfect. So if you want to have more details, go to the GOKb session. And I mean, our trainings take 3 hours. So if you want to learn all about what's going on and what you can do with GOKb, that would take more time. What I would like to demo today is really that it's for an ERM librarian quite quick and easy to add data, even if it's not in your internal knowledge base. So it's no complicated process to add packages to the GOKb. And on the other hand, it's very useful because you can reuse the data in your internal knowledge base. And this really is something where all the libraries work together. You can see I've done this as my institution, and I'm taking then care of this package, and everyone can use this in their internal knowledge bases. And another institution takes care of another package that I don't need to upload. So it's really a shared effort. So, and you can see that now we have 2 green bars, and there is one step that's still necessary. We have a specific in progress status here still, and I need to change that. I have approved this, and it's then checked. No review requests. We had no errors, and then I always need, and that's what I forgot in the beginning. I always need to go back to this last step and submit. Otherwise, the changes aren't safe. That's always important. But now this package is uploaded, and with the next sync process, it will be updated to my Folio system and to all Folio installations that have connected this GOKb. So it's really, I have done this upload and everyone can use it. I have one more slide and then I will hand over to Owen if there are no other questions. Reasons why we use the global open knowledge base. It's really, the GOKb is open source. And we have this ID and metadata enrichment that we need in our networks. Sorry, thank you, Owen. It's good. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, we need the metadata, and you really have more information that you can use then in subsequent systems as well. Great is really this tracking of package changes that happens in the GOKb, because every library that takes care of a specific package will update the title list when there are new title lists. So if you have new titles or drop titles, those will be recorded, and you always have a current list in your internal Folio system that you can work with. And that would then be updated when we have developed this connection to our union catalog as well. So we will see there then the titles that have been added automatically. Another advantage of using the internal knowledge base, not necessarily with a global open knowledge base, is that you can compare packages with each other and can really make use of the ERM comparisons app. And this cooperative concept that we have with the GOKb has really proven successful for us in Germany, I think, not only for our network, but in Germany, because you share the effort. It may sound like frightening that we say, okay, you're responsible for a package, but in the end, you are responsible usually for all packages. And in this case, you're only responsible for some. So I think that's really an advantage. And we have a very, very close cooperation between Folio and GOKb teams. And we have a very reconciled development. So we take care that Folio and GOKb really work together in a good and efficient way. I see a question. I would, before that, ask, I'm always frightened to look at Moritz and Christine. Do you have anything to add? Did I miss anything? Okay, thank you. Thanks for your help. Sorry.
I had a question about the diagram slide.
Yeah, give me 1 second. Why did I do that? I don't know. Now showing, or is it not showing?
It's only showing small.
Okay, sorry, then stop and share again, and then you can already ask.
All right. So, wait, you have discovery system at the bottom, and you have the ERM stuff at the top. Where does article level metadata anywhere in this flow? Or is it just title level? Like let's say you have journals, then you say journals there, right?
Yeah, for our data flow, it's really title level at this moment. So what you can see in the union catalog in the end is the journal or the ebook and all the titles within the package.
So what are you currently using for article stuff in your discovery system? Is that, unless that's
the experts. Maybe you can record what they have asked and give an update.
Right. Yeah. So the question was in this context, or in this picture, how where is the article level for our workflow? And what we're doing is we are running a very big Solr index, which is fed by the union catalog as well as directly by publishers and other providers with article data. So, and we're connecting the articles to the to the title levels between the union catalog and this index, this solar index, and the discovery system then connects to the solar index.
So the solar index of article level metadata is outside of.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's
Well, it's a GOKb team and discovery experts in our research. Any other questions? Yeah, Jessica. Oh, I'm sorry.
Did you have another knowledge base before GOKb? And if so, how did that migration work? How did the implementation work?
We didn't migrate any data, so we are now working with GOKb, and every data that we now have in our system, like in Folio, is added manually. So no migration from ERM data because we had no ERM system before. And with the implementation of Folio ERM, we needed to think about how we can get some metadata, and that's why we're then using the GOKb since then. Can you see no question in chat? Any other question from here? Okay then, so I mean I will stay in the room. I would then, Owen, hand over the mic.
There's a question just come up. Well, maybe that would. Well,
yeah, the local KB data, we get the data from the external source GOKb. So but there are other ways to to get data into the local knowledge base that will Owen now describe. Yeah.
Okay, we might need some help. So share.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
One other question. Is this live? Now, is this what you do today?
yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Here we share still the screen.
where is that?
Stop sharing.
Yeah.
And then start. You can close my PowerPoint. Maybe that helps. Just yeah, just X for the things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that so? We need to share this. Where's my Zoom thing on?
Top right here. It's here. To use this and then share. And Zoom has I don't know what it is. Let's try again. Should be here. Yes. And then slideshow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What's still not sharing?
Why is that?
We're just having some technical issues for those online. We're just trying to get the slides to share properly.
No. We should try again. There was an error when trying to share. Sorry, that. It's there, but it's not there. Okay. What are we gonna do? Does it make sense that you connect your laptop or?
Should we try that? Okay, we're just going to try swapping laptops. Just give us a sec.
Okay. I'm mute myself and then you can.
And hopefully people can hear me. I see there's a question. There's another question while we're waiting. Martina, if you'd like to take that question.
There is a question. There is a question on what happens if I upload the same data to GOKb as another institution. I mean, and please help me, Moritz, you can upload the same package as another institution, right? I mean, it would not make any sense necessarily, but is there anything? I will bring you the mic.
So generally you can, if you try to take input it with the same name, you will be denied. But having a single globally valid package in the GOKb is more of it's more of an offer, or we would like obviously to be there to be a single package for each package record for each globally available package from a provider. And
Let me
we
just
might
try something.
talk to the curatory groups if such duplicates are reported. But you can, if you want to have your own package, which you can adjust, which with information for example, coverage information that differs from the global package, you can always create your own local package, which you can do with whatever you like.
Oh,
Thank you, Moritz, again. We just need to take care. We have some screen issues here in the room. It just takes us maybe 2 seconds.
I will
give you the mic so that everyone can hear.
Sorry. Just given it's global, all right, I'm just wondering, or is there examples of some of the institutions that are using it globally?
All right, so I think as long as I'm not holding up the big progress here. So the global open knowledge base was initially created or primarily managed by the NCSU in the US, and it was heavily involved with the.
can we try yours again, Martina?
There was a big shift when NCSU wanted to relinquish their heavily involved field, and the three big German institutions stepped in to take over, and we started having like a new pilot phase, and up to now, most of the libraries working in GOKb are still German. But for example, the Swedish National Consortium BIPSAM recently migrated files, and we're also in talks with other international institutions. But it's in fact it's mostly German right now.
I will try to.
The US
Is there a number?
take it over. Even in the US using it.
So there's no library that is actively curating their own packages. We don't, since the APIs are open, we don't really know if any libraries are using the existing packages. But we did have a few test runs with several libraries and consortia. But none of them are live as far as I know.
Yes, it says yes.
So just we're struggling with some technical issues in the room. We can either get a screen that shows on Zoom or a screen that shows on in the room, but not both at the moment. So we're just calling tech support. Apologies while we pause briefly to try and handle that. I will say just what I can say without a slide right now. There was a question earlier about the reference titles in GOKb, and I wanted to give an example because this also relates to issues we see in Folio as well, and we then have to investigate. So an example we had was there's a journal called British Catholic History that used to be called Recusant History, that was then before that called for some reason Biographical Studies, and this has had the original was published 1951 to 1956, then 1957 to 2014 was the second title, and in 2015 it became British Catholic History. Each of those title changes relates to a different set of ISSNs. The original title has a print ISSN but no electronic. The other two titles have print and electronic ISSNs, and they all have also assigned by the journal's catalogue in Germany IDs called the ZDB ID, and again, one for online, one for print, for all three of them in that case. There's online and print for both. And what we found was that an upload had uploaded some information about recusant history with the ISSN, which was the print ISSN for recusant history. And then somebody had uploaded British Catholic History also with the print ISSN for recusant history. And so at that point, you're being told by an external person that the whoever's managing that data, that these two are essentially the same journal because they have the same ISSN. And you end up with like, well, okay, so this, we have, which title is it? And with a good set of reference data, you can catch those things and stop them happening and fix them in the source. If you let that data into your system, you start to get worse and worse, because the next time then somebody updates one of those, like using the wrong ISSN, then you get another conflict, and you get groups of ISSNs that should never be on the same publication and all this kind of thing. So getting that kind of backbone of really high quality data is a huge help to solving those problems in the long run. And I think that's both what was a vision for GOKb, and also in Germany is a vision for the serials catalogue. There are obviously national catalogues in other countries as well. I think Germany might be unusual in having specifically the serials catalogue. I don't know whether that's replicated in other countries. Certainly not in the UK has had kind of some stuff, but not quite the same. But yeah, that's so. These are problems we see all the time with journal data. It's a nightmare. So if I plug mine in, then it doesn't display on this correctly, but I can share from it. And then we plug back to this, and now it's not displaying at all.
Okay. All right, sorry, well, you can carry on.
Well, we'll pause now while we try and see if we can resolve the technical issues.
The official person is supposedly on their way. But...
you want to share the PowerPoint in Slack, we can all just follow.
The PowerPoint is already on Sched.
Yeah, right.
So, or Shed, depending on, do you say it's Shed or Sched?
Progress.
Sched.
Good.
Sched.
Yeah.
So the question is, can people online now hear me?
Yeah.
And see and if I share my screen, can you now see my screen? Woo! Oh, so happy. Right. Wow, well, I hope this is worth waiting for. I'm not entirely sure, but right. Okay. So some time ago, it feels like maybe yesterday, Martina showed how they were using GOKb and talked a little bit about like the connection with Folio. And I want to dig into that a little bit more. So I'm going to start with a kind of recap on we have in Folio, we have what we call an agreement. And for those of you who haven't worked with agreements, broadly, and I'm not going to go into huge amounts of detail, but a Folio agreement represents an agreement between a library and a supplier, generally, to give access to a set of resources with a specific license for a period of time. So there is kind of quite a lot of flexibility in how exactly you use those definitions, and you can kind of decide to split down agreements that maybe are one contract, but you want to represent as multiple things, or however you do it. We find like a little bit of variety of practice, but essentially that's the idea. The resources are then linked into agreements via something called an agreement line. An agreement line can either represent a single title, so that could be, typically that's a serial, but it could be an ebook, so a serial monograph, or a group of resources that come together, which we would call a package. And a single agreement can have one or more, or 0 to more agreement lines. So if you could just write an agreement that said, this is our Elsevier agreement, but we're not going to bother to fill in any of the detail. Like Elsevier are handling all that for us. We trust them. So we'll just say we've got this agreement with Elsevier and it lasts until the end of next year. And that's all we need to say. But you can also add agreement lines to represent the resources. And this presentation is going to be about methods of making the resource metadata available in Folio agreements, so that when you add an agreement line, then you actually have some description of the resource that represents. So there are actually 3 types of agreement line, and each one supports a slightly different mechanism for describing the resource that it's for. There's the internal agreement line, and that points to a resource described in a knowledge base that is inside the agreements app, so what we call the local knowledge base. And when Martina talked about populating the local knowledge base, it's a knowledge base structure inside agreements. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. We have external agreement lines. These are agreement lines that point at resources that are described somewhere else. Currently, the only somewhere else supported is a link to the eHoldings application, which in turn is basically pointing at EBSCO's knowledge base, or HLM, whatever we call it. I usually call it the EBSCO knowledge base to keep it kind of quite generic, but yeah. So it's pointing to the resources in the EBSCO knowledge base, and the design there is that like we store basically an ID for that external resource, and then we draw in the information for display when necessary. So there's nothing in that design particularly that says it could only be eHoldings and EBSCO knowledge base, but that is the situation right now. And finally, we have what's called a detached agreement line, and a detached agreement line doesn't have a resource record, but has a description. And you can type in a free text description of whatever you want to just say like, and you could, write in a package name, or you could write in a journal name, but basically you're doing, I don't know, lightweight kind of work yourself to say, this is an agreement line for this resource. So those can be used independently of any resource metadata you have access to. And what we see is even if you're using the internal knowledge base, so maybe the GOKb situation that Martina's described, or you're an EBSCO customer and you're using e-holdings and they're all external agreement lines, in most cases, we also find people sometimes use detached because they have a resource that isn't described in their knowledge base and is never going to be described in their knowledge base. So maybe that's a database resource or a streaming video resource or something that is just, isn't seen as in scope of that knowledge base. You're not going to get a KBART file for it. It kind of just doesn't fit the normal pattern. And you just write, okay, we have Canopy or whatever it is that we have. And like, that's obviously a compromise, but it's a way of recording stuff that is not described in a knowledge base anywhere. I should say I'm very happy to take questions as we go along. Hopefully Martina is able to monitor the chat and in the room, just let me know. Okay. So the internal knowledge base is like a way of storing the resource descriptions inside the FOLIO agreements app. And there are currently 3 different ways you can populate that knowledge base. And there's one new way under development. And today I want to talk a bit about the advantages and disadvantages of each of those before then kind of throwing out to the floor for some question and discussion about where we should go next in terms of being able to kind of link to the resources that you have in your knowledge bases or in external descriptions or wherever it is. Like, what is it that we need to do to make this work for more sites, more institutions, more fluidly, just better. So the 4 I've listed here, knowledge base adapters, that's when I'll go into these in a bit more detail, but when Martina was showing the GOKb configuration, like you configure the external data resource, that's a knowledge base adapter. And I'll talk about what that is. There's file import. You can directly import resources from files, of course, KBART files. Again, I'll talk about that a bit more. There's something called the package import API. And that's been used, I think, in one specific instance so far. And then finally, the new thing we're developing is something we're calling PushKB. And I'll talk about what that does and how it's different and why we've ended up developing it. I mean, you would have thought that maybe 3 was enough, but no, we can't rest there. So, knowledge base adapters. In the agreements module, and the piece of software I'm talking about here is called mod agreements. So doesn't really matter day to day, but the way FOLIO apps are developed, it's called mod agreements. There's a set of code called an adapter, and for each external type of knowledge base you wish to get data from, there needs to be an adapter that knows how to talk to that knowledge base, how to get data from that knowledge base and put it into the local knowledge base. And what it does, that the adapter needs to be able to request a complete package data. So essentially it consumes data 1 package at a time. So it needs to be able to say, give me whatever package, and that could be like the next package in your list. So it's not usually like, give me this package. It's like, give me the next package you have for me. And all the content, all the titles that are in it, all the coverage information, everything you'd expect to be in that. And get that from an API or some interface that so an API is an application programming interface, but it's essentially a machine-to-machine communication interface where it can get that data from. And the adapter then has the code to go and do that, get that data back, extract all of the data from the response and map it into a format defined by agreements. So that is essentially map it into a format that the agreements can then push into its local knowledge base. And so the adapter piece of software sits in FOLIO in the agreements app doing that work. And when we talk about the GOKb configuration, we call it the GOKb adapter. I don't know, you might not have noticed, but in the external resource, there was a field labeled type that had a long string of information in it. And basically, it's pointing at the bit of code that's the adapter that we're going to use for that knowledge the advantages of using this, the knowledge base adapters, is a single adapter is needed for each external knowledge base API. So if we had an we have an adapter for GOKb, right? So if there's GOKb test or GOKb live, or if, I mean, I know it's global open knowledge base, but if somebody were to set up their own version of GOKb using the same software, but called it, I don't know, USKB or whatever, then it would be the same adapter. There's no, like, it knows how to talk to that external data source because it knows what the API is, it knows what the shape of the data is, it knows how to get it. So once we've done it for one knowledge base API, then it works for all instances of that knowledge base. It's distributed in the agreements module, so it's available to, so once we write an adapter, that's immediately available to everybody who's using Folio. Or it requires a software release. I'll talk about that in a sec, but essentially it's available to everybody once we've written it. It's an automated process designed to work without manual intervention. So that process of harvesting the data from GOKb, in the case of the GOKb adapter, is meant to be mainly automatic. Martina pointed to, like, you sometimes get error logs. Sometimes it doesn't work smoothly. You might need to investigate why not. But it's not designed that generally you need to look at stuff. You only need to look at stuff that's gone wrong. And the process runs every hour. So there are relatively short delays between data being updated in GOKb and that being available in your Folio local knowledge base. So generally, like, Martina added a package. If that package is all ready to harvest, and there are some kind of filters on that. So Martina's mentioned, like, in GOKb, there are some statuses of package, like whether it's in progress or whether it's ready to be used. And that's their internal work process. We don't care about that. But in the adapter, we have something that says only take live packages. And so as soon as that's live, we'd harvest it the next hour and you'd see it.
Questions now?
Yeah, yeah.
So how would other commercial KBs connect an adapter or through e-holdings? Why is AppScope KB connected to e-holdings and not agreement?
I think I need to tackle that at the end or come back to it because I want to go through the options. So let me talk about the different options and where I think that I am trying to answer that question a little bit by the presentation. I don't think there's a simple answer to that. Like, there's not it's just because X, Y, Z. But I'll try and answer it as well as I can through the presentation. However, disadvantages, we can't distribute updaters to the adapter except as part of the Folio release. So the flip side of, like, you all getting it is that if GOKb tomorrow decides, actually, we could do this really great improvement to our API, and we're going to do that next week, but it will change some stuff for you guys. Is that okay? We have to say, well, okay, we have the Poppy release coming in November. So if we start writing code now, maybe we can get that ready for the Poppy release. And if you wouldn't mind not changing your API until we've done that and got that release out, that would be great, because otherwise everything that works at the moment will break unless you continue to support backward compatibility. And there's no, they are then tied. GOKb API, which is not for us, it's for everyone, right, is tied to the Folio release cycle, and that's crazy. So that's no good. The external knowledge base needs to support an appropriate API or another way for the adapter to fetch the data from it incrementally. So you need to be able to keep updating. And when there's an update in the remote knowledge base, you can't just take a copy of the entire knowledge base every time. That would be hopelessly inefficient and would be a never-ending job, because it's a harvest of the complete GOKb takes long enough. Once you've done it, though, you're just getting updates. So you have a new system, you have to put a day aside or maybe 2 days aside or something and let it do its job. And then you can it's just incremental. So it's hopefully okay. Any knowledge base you're going to use with this approach would need to support that kind of incremental harvest. And a lot of knowledge bases just don't have these APIs in the first place. So it's not we can talk we'll talk a bit later, but like if you wanted this method to work with, let's say SFX, you need to persuade a company that's no longer developing SFX to add a new API to it and support all the stuff that we need. It's not, it's not practical. It's not going to happen. The adapter works in one way. Once we've released that adapter, it works the same for everybody. So if you have like special needs locally, then that's very difficult. Like there's no customization. And so back to that idea, like GOKb has a workflow where a package has different statuses as it's curated, and we don't harvest it until it's ready, like finalized, because we don't want to bring in data that's still in progress. We don't want to bring in data that is only half done. We want all the errors to be resolved, or all of the person who's creating it to say it's all ready to go, and then we harvest it. And we have software logic that says, if you notice that it says in progress, don't harvest this. And when it says complete, harvest it. But maybe you actually would like the in progress stuff. Maybe you want to get ahead of the game, or maybe you're desperately waiting for this package to be in your stuff, and you don't mind if it's not complete yet, but you just want it now so you don't forget later. Or more realistically, we've had requests like in GOKb, you can say a package is for a particular consortium. We harvest everything at the moment, but if you're only really interested in that consortium package if you're a member of that consortium. Otherwise, it's just noise. And so you might want to have a customization that says only bring in stuff from this consortium, or not from other consortiums, or whatever. And none of that's possible because the adapter just does what it does, and we don't say, we could add more and more switches that you could, add to the configuration, but it just gets more and more complicated. And Martina kindly kind of didn't go into this, but in the error logs and the information logs that you get as a result of a harvest, what you get is a big old chunk of JSON with all of the errors for all of that harvest. And if you look on Folio Snapshot and you look at the log, the harvest log, Folio Snapshot is a reference environment. You can use it. Everybody can access that. And it's reset every day. And so every morning we do a harvest of GOKb test as a result. And if you look at the first harvest of the day, you'll see an error log with hundreds of errors in it. And you're looking for like the one that's actually important to you. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. And while there are ways of extracting that data, as Martina said, and then you can put it into a piece of software that maybe helps you understand it, but it's not simple, it's not straightforward. There's nothing that really helps you spot the stuff you care about. So errors in the process are actually hard to spot and correct. So that's what works for GOKb at the moment, but it has its shortcomings. Additionally, we support file import. So in a module called WOLFcon admin, this actually is, in the UI, you'll see it in the Folio interface, that there's something called WOLFcon admin, but it's actually talks to agreements. So it's actually another interface for another aspect of the agreements app. So if you're using agreements, you'll be used to using the agreements app. Just like that app actually has multifaceted functionality. You can't fit it all into one UI. So we have a separate one for the WOLFcon admin. Martina showed it earlier, and you can upload a file into Folio. And the data formats supported are KBART and a JSON schema that is defined by agreements. So that JSON, if you're not familiar with it, I think probably everybody, well, maybe not. If you're not familiar with it, think XML, but either simpler or more complicated, depending on your point of view. It's a way of just structured data, and you can create a file which you can import into agreements. So this can be used by any user with the appropriate permissions. Obviously, you might not let everybody just load whatever they want into your knowledge base, but it means that the responsibility can be shared out. Data can be loaded from a variety of sources, so you're not limited to one external knowledge base. As long as it's a KBART file, or you can convert it to the data import format, it will work. KBART's readily available from lots of places, no special APIs required. Depending on the requirements, KBART is so depending on requirements, institutions can use the JSON format to load data, and that allows more local control over what's loaded for each package and the detail of what's loaded for each package. So you can set your own metadata. You have a lot of control at that level. Disadvantages, it's a manual process. Data has to be added one whole package at a time. And KBART has its limitations as a data format. If you load a package in the JSON format, you can put in all kinds of lovely metadata about what kind of data information is in the package or which consortium it's available to. KBART doesn't have any of that. So you import a KBART file, it goes in as a KBART file, it's a package, that's it. You get minimal metadata in that case. Data has to be loaded one package at a time. I should have mentioned this actually earlier. That's also true for the adapters. There are package at a time adapters. If you're loading a KBART file, even from a relatively large journal provider, you're talking about thousands of lines in the KBART file, but thousands of titles. If you try and load an ebook package, it can be huge. When we try and start processing a package at a time, and you have 250,000 records in an ebook package, and you want to load that into your KB, we hit problems at an architectural level. The way Folio works, it is not designed fundamentally to support long-running processes that are independent of anything else. So what we found, and it does depend a bit on the way that your hosting provider or you locally host the Folio and how you set it up, what we found with GBV is that if you have a setup where you're running this on containerized resources, and so this is technical jargon. The root of it is that processes can just stop midway, and with no warning, no information, no feedback, it just stops. And then there's no way of picking that up. And we've done work to try and make sure that that doesn't happen, or to mitigate the effects when that does happen. Martina mentioned on the external knowledge base adapter, there's a reset option, and that's why that's there, because we can't anticipate when it might happen, but we do need you to be able to reset the whole thing if it does. But it's not a great solution, and it's impossible, I think, for us to work around in the Folio architecture. Now, I may be wrong that it's impossible, but certainly not trivial, and we haven't found a solution to that yet. So loading a package at a time is okay if it's small packages, but falls down when it's a big package. And for instance, with GOKb, the way that works is we request pages of packages, and we get 3 at a time from GOKb, and we process those one by one. But 3, we can get 3 in a row that are huge, and every single library in the GBV network, for example, needs a copy of that data. So every single one of their Folio instances is going to harvest that data. So GOKb gets hammered because we're making those requests for every Folio instance, although GOKb has lots of nice caching and stuff to stop that being necessarily a problem. But I'm aware that we're increasing the requests to GOKb, and GBV servers are doing a huge amount of work, which is just the same work again and again and again. Package import. Okay, so the package import API was developed specifically to support a German consortial e-resource system called Laser. And the reason that ended up being different is they wanted to import not just resources, but agreements for those resources as well, and licenses for those resources as well. So it's a little bit of a different model where we're bringing in the whole resource package as part of the agreement. So they say, here's an agreement, it's the consortial Springer agreement, whatever. Here's all the resources that are in it with all the information about those resources like coverage and whatever, and here's the license. And we had to have a way of creating the resources, creating the agreements, linking up those two things and linking the license. And so that's why we came up with a slightly different way of working. We were already aware at this point of some of the shortcomings of what we already had. So this is an external piece of software. So instead of Folio pulling everything in, we've got an API in Folio called the package import API, and that is hit from external systems to push package information into Folio. And the advantage of that is that we no longer have this issue with the knowledge base adapter where we're tied to a Folio release. If Laser change their API tomorrow, that software needs updating, but we can do that at the same time. No Folio release needed. The package API continues to work. Everybody's happy. I'll go on to the advantages, disadvantages. The process can be automated, but it requires the external software to do that. And there's in that, because it's an external piece of software pushing the data in, again, whoever's writing that software has the opportunity to customize it to their own requirements. So if they want to add some metadata as the data goes through, they can do that. As long as we support it in the internal knowledge base, they can add that in. And that gives them a lot more flexibility. They can add their own IDs if they want to add IDs for packages that they have from some other local system. All of that's possible, but somebody has to write that software. The process hasn't really been developed with knowledge-based synchronization in mind. It's like a way of getting the data in, but it's not really a synchronization process. It's like push this data in, and if we need to, overwrite the data and like just keep updating it. So it's not really written in quite the same way. It still has the data being added a package at a time. So on the Folio side, we can still end up with very long running processes. Folio deployment is not always friendly to long running jobs. So you might guess that, you know, some of the reasons we're ending up doing something new now. So we're trying to learn the lessons of what we've done. We're trying to look at the requirements, especially we've worked closely with GBV on this, of course, because the current system, because it's causing some problems and a lot of computing resources needed, it doesn't scale great. It doesn't scale very well, I should say. So we're looking at a new thing, which is similar to the package import API in that it's somewhere you can push the data into, but it tries to address some of the current issues. So we plan once this is not available in ORCID, it's written and ready to be deployed in Poppy. But the way we're approaching this, because we've been bitten several times now, we're trying to learn. The way we expect to approach this is there is a switch in the software when you build the software as whether you use the knowledge base adapter approach or whether you use the push KB approach. And Poppy probably will build by default with, well, no, definitely with the existing knowledge base adapter working as it does, switched on. We can then work with partners. I think GBV is going to be the obvious one, where we do an alternative build of exactly the same version of the software. So it's just a drop-in module for their existing module. There's no new release needed for that. It will be the same version, but just built with a switch put on so that they can use the push KB method, and then they will be able to start experimenting that in scale in their test systems to make sure that we iron out all the issues before we finally switch over to using that. The advantages, it's going to separate out the import of general package information and title level data for the package. So we'll create a package record, which will be basically, here's the Springer Leisure collection. That's what it's called. It's provided by Springer. It contains ebooks. And then we will add each title to it one by one. And so we are never having a long-running job that's trying to do the whole package at once. We will just incrementally add. It means from the user side, you'll see kind of a package added to the system with 0 content and then tick up. But that should be transitory. I mean, it won't be, we won't expect that to be continuous, but it obviously, if you happen to hit it while that package was being added for the first time, you would see that. But again, once it's done, incremental changes, we don't have to ingest, at the moment, if there's one change to a package, we have to ingest that whole package over. This way, if there's one change to the package, we just ingest that change. We don't have to ingest every content of that package, just the change content. It avoids long-running jobs. Alongside this, we're looking at improvements to how we identify errors and issues with data synchronization. It forces us to address some stuff that we know is an issue at the moment, and we're taking advantage of that. We're working with the GBV users who suffer from this most because they're using the GOKb adapter for GOKb to understand what is it they actually need to know at the end of the process. What are the errors they're interested in? Like, most of the time, actually, they're not interested if it's not part of an agreement. I mean, that would be my first fundamental rule, is like, if it's not part of an active agreement, who cares if it's mucked up? You know, it's like, yeah, I can worry about that when I add it to my agreement. So actually what we intend to do is to surface that data much more on the package or title level in Folio. So if you look at a package record in Folio, you'll see if there were issues when we last synchronized it, rather than that being done by a big log of everything that went wrong or everything that went right. By externalizing this, we'll be able to do changes to the process. As long as that push KB interface is okay, any changes to the process outside of that, we can do independently of Folio releases or CSPs, so you're no longer tied into that release cycle. We bring in this opportunity. If you want to customize the data as it goes through, you could write some extra code to do that. And it gives opportunities for institutions with common requirements to collaborate on building, you know, let's build a piece of, I mean, what I would call middleware. It kind of sits between two systems and get that working for whatever the thing we're all using in common is, and make that work. But the downside is that it means that stuff that currently is kind of built into Folio is externalized, and so somebody needs to build that. Certainly with the work we're doing. So when I say we, in this case, I mean the work that the Knowledge Integration, which is the software company that develops the Agreements app and other Folio apps, and is contracted by GBV for some of this work, will be writing that software, or they'll be writing that software. I subcontract to them, so I'll be involved in the process, but we'll be writing that software to do it for GBV. And that, again, like once that's written, obviously that could be used by anybody who wanted to use GOKb in that instance. We haven't worked out some of the design issues there completely yet, but it also gives us the opportunity to harvest from GOKb once in that piece of software and push out the result to many different Folio instances once. So there might even be some other optimizations we can make there, but certainly we know there's at least one, which is request once, send to many, and that makes sense. Okay, right. Those are all the different ways. Let's pause for a moment to just say, like, what I want to do next is I want to say, like, okay, we talked a lot about GOKb this morning. I can touch on e-holdings as well, although I'm not an expert on e-holdings. Zorian is the room, might be able to answer some questions, but I don't want to put him on the spot. It's not his job to make my job easier. But so we can touch on e-holdings as well, and maybe I'll do that before we dig into the other stuff. But what I'd like to do really is just talk about what are the sources now. Like, I think if we'd had this conversation, we started this development, like we started agreements development in 2018. We're 5 years on from that. The library software picture has changed a little since then, kind of continued in a direction it was already heading in, but maybe and you'll see on the next slide, I did the first, I think I did the first implementation of SFX in a UK library. So, you know, I'm old school and my knowledge is old school. But what are the knowledge bases that people would want to see us working with? What, like, because I think we have an opportunity here to start looking at what are the practical ways in which you could do those integrations, given the 4 options I've now described, and what are the potential sources that you'd like to see us work on, or like to see somebody working on? I'm not kind of committing us to doing something, but the community, like, where should we be pushing at this? And secondly, I would like to talk about the challenges. How long do we have, Martina?
I think we're at time, but we have 30 minutes of break. I don't know whether we spend like some minutes.
Maybe we don't have time. Let me say something about e-holdings. Let's take questions. I think we'll have to call it there. Apologies, unfortunately, the technical issues got in the way. E-holdings existed already before we started development on agreements. We had long conversations with EBSCO about the models here, and at that time, we decided that we wouldn't harvest the EBSCO knowledge base. To be fair to the EBSCO team, they pointed out some of the problems that that I'm describing now. So, it's non-trivial. There's also an issue of, like, if you make a copy of all the data that EBSCO have carefully curated over time, like, what happens to that copy and who gets access to it and this kind of thing. So I think there are some maybe some concerns there, which again are completely fair, I think. But we do keep coming back to this. Could we, because at the moment, if you use external, back to the beginning of my presentation, if you use external agreement lines, there's functionality you don't get, that you do get if you use local, the internal local knowledge base. So things like we have a facility to compare 2 packages in the local knowledge base. We don't have that for external resources. You also, there's like, we can't do an export of, if we can't efficiently do an export of all the resources in a package, if those resources are being stored elsewhere and we have to call an API for every thing we want to export, there are limitations to that approach. I would say, though, despite those limitations, my impression from EBSCO customers using that approach is that they are fundamentally happy, but there are some things they'd like to see it do better. I think there's some middle ground we could look at striking here. So, for example, we've talked about, could we just add packages if they're activated in your knowledge base? So don't push the whole knowledge base, push the stuff that I've actually activated, that I have some claim on. I think that might be possible, and especially with the push KB method, that the decision about what people get and how much they get could be with a third party. So we're no longer the gatekeepers to, like, it harvests everything or nothing or anything like that. Those decisions can be made by people who want their customers to use the knowledge base in a certain way, and currently maybe can't. But I think that it's complicated. If you duplicate the data, you have it in 2 places. Like, that is problematic usually because you want to manage it in one place. So you have to be careful about what you're doing. The GOKb situation is slightly different because GOKb is aimed at only the knowledge base aspect. It's not, nobody activates their resources in GOKb. They describe them, and in Folio they have the chance of saying, okay, this is part of our agreement. That I think that's fair. Is that fair? Yeah. Okay, I'm getting a nod. That's not to say GOKb couldn't act in that way, but that's the kind of model that we've adopted. So it's a little bit different. So I think I'm going to have to stop there. Zorin, you have a comment?
A comment question.
Sure.
Don't worry, I'm not commenting on EBSCO or e-holdings. I think one thing that overlies all of this in FOLIO ERM, whether you're using the local knowledge base and GOKb, or if you're an EBSCO customer of FOLIO using e-holdings, is FOLIO fundamentally is not the place where you manage access to electronic resources right now. And that's not how it was designed. It's designed, no, you don't turn on a package in Folio, and it results in article level discovery in whatever discovery tool you're using that's outside of Folio, right? So the full ERM, if you define ERM as more than just managing your legal and managing your entitlements.
It feels like a slightly deep discussion. I think we could
Right, but no, I'm not trying to start a discussion. I'm just saying, like, that's the source of the tension here, because like no matter what you do with any of these options and what's there currently, you still have to go to an outside system and push a button, right?
Sorry.
So I guess it might depend on your depends on how you think about what it does or doesn't support. So one of the things that you can do once you add something to the internal knowledge base, there is a feed out of Folio for every resource in an agreement with the license details to be consumed by an external system. And that we don't say how that should be consumed by an external system. Every change that happens is in that log, and you can query that log either in an incremental way or from a time period and see what is active. And in our terms, that means part of an active agreement or not active. And so as things join or leave packages, as things join or leave agreements, that is in that external feed. So I would argue that could be used exactly to do what you say, but Folio itself does not do it directly. So we did originally in the adapter, there's a switch in the adapter to say, does it also activate resources? But we haven't got any examples of that being used because it doesn't make sense in GOKb and we haven't done it anywhere else. But that external feed, I think, is exactly how you could achieve what you're saying, but it's not built in. Is that fair? I mean, I say that's fair, but that, yeah. So that is there. And that is how. So then the question of article level metadata, we're obviously not doing that. But if you say that article level metadata is a facet of like the things you've activated, you could like, do you see what I mean? It's like it's either part of a package you've activated or a journal you've activated or not. Then the activation is not at the article level, it's at the owner of that article level. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm not suggesting this is like a done deal or straightforward, but I think the parts of the mechanism are there to do it if that was somebody's vision to achieve. And that is, as I understand it, how in Germany that will eventually work. So they will consume that feed into the union catalog to say, which will then show in the union catalog exactly which e-resources each institution in Germany has, and that can then feed into discovery level behavior. But that's way outside my scope. Yeah. Okay. I'm so sorry we've overrun. Yeah, I hope that was interesting. I need to find another time to have this discussion about where should we go next. Come and talk to me. Tell me what knowledge bases you want to see. Tell me your ideas about how that might work. And we'll start to try and put together some plans that we can move forward as a group, as a community, and try and make this happen.